Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTB World. They say that if you've met one person with autism, then you've just met that one person with autism, which again, of course, at a very basic level reiterates the fact that people with autism have extremely diverse needs, and this is something that we as a Pakistani society need to then understand. Today on our show, we'll be talking about autism, that too not only from a medical standpoint, but also additionally from a societal perspective too. We'll be talking about how does autism not only impact individuals, how does it also impact families and the community at large per se too. We'll also be talking about, the challenges that autistic individuals do face, whether it is with regards to having due access to healthcare facilities, whether it is with regards to having due access to educational facilities, or for that matter, in this regard, being employed, or for that matter, having equal employment opportunities as compared to able-bodied persons too. In this regard, we'll also be talking about not one, rather the various laws and policies that we do have in place, which generally cater to needs of special persons, which at some level also, of course, includes autistic persons per se. And in this regard, we'll also be shedding light upon the various initiatives that the Pakistani government has taken when it comes to supporting such individuals. And last but not the least, the very extremely important role of Pakistani media, of pop culture, of films, of course, television dramas do when it comes to portraying such individuals, that too in a very positive and, of course, in an empowering light. All of this today, that too with an extremely diverse panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for today's show is Osama Khawar, who is an analyst. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam ji.
Thank you for joining us. Alongside him, I have Ms. Fatma Batul. She's an educationist and she's also a social activist. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for having me.
You're most welcome. And via telephone line, we'll be joined by Sadia Salman, who is a parent and she's also been a caregiver of an autistic child herself. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Now, before we start the discussion on today's topic, let's have a look at this brief report.
Autism is a spectrum disorder, and individuals may exhibit a range of behaviors, including difficulty with social interaction, repetitive behaviors, and challenges with communication. However, it's important to recognize that each individual with autism is unique and may have their own strengths and abilities. While autism presents challenges, it also brings diversity and unique perspectives to our communities. Individuals with autism often possess remarkable talents and abilities, contributing positively to various fields such as art, science, and technology. Parents and teachers play a crucial role in supporting autistic children. By providing love, understanding, and appropriate resources, they can help these children thrive and reach their full potential. With the right support, autistic individuals can lead fulfilling lives and make meaningful contributions to society. It's essential to recognize the rights of autistic children and ensure that they have access to education, healthcare, and opportunities for social inclusion. Let's address some misconceptions about autism. By dispelling myths and promoting understanding, we can create a more inclusive society where individuals with autism are valued and respected for who they are. Together, let's celebrate the unique abilities and strengths of individuals with autism and work towards a more inclusive and supportive society for all.
Welcome back. We just saw this report. I would like to start the conversation with you, Ms. Sadia. So when we do talk about autism per se, we all understand the fact that this is that one condition which is not very easy to diagnose. We also understand the fact that, the symptoms, they may be such that they may vary from day to day. Typical symptoms that a girl child might have might be very different from those which we do see emanating in a boy child too. So overall, from your first-hand experiences, that too of being a parent of an autistic child, what are those typical signs and symptoms that you particularly need to look out for, especially when you are suspecting autism in your child?
Yes, it's very difficult to diagnose since no two kids are alike on the spectrum. The symptoms can go from mild to severe and it can vary day to day, and progress is difficult to predict. Our brain is a very complex organ and external factors influence our behavior even as regular people. So our internal health is like our gut health. It affects our behaviors and everything. So there are huge ups and downs which can affect the diagnosis. So it's very difficult to diagnose one person on the spectrum. Many parents I meet have the same story. Their kids were fine till age 2.5 or 3, and then something changed and they regressed in mental age. Some pin it to the dreaded MMR vaccine, which is given at about the same age. Some say it's genetic. But in my observation as a mom of a child on the spectrum and having met many other parents who have kids with special needs, I would say it's linked to the gut microbiome. Well, that's my observation. It still needs to be studied, and everybody needs to find their own, reasons behind it. So we tried all kinds of dietary changes like gluten-free, casein-free, etc. to find out what works for the child. Approximately 50% people say that they see a big difference when dairy or wheat is removed from the diet. My experience was different though. I feel sugar is the worst and runs havoc with the flora balance, killing the good bacteria. Some symptoms to look for as a parent in the early years are repetitive movements or echolalia. That's when they mimic your words or they mimic their own words, repeating the same words over and over again, and avoiding eye contact, and also having digestive issues like constipation. Hyperlexia is something my son had as a toddler, and it seemed at that time that he was a gifted child. Many of the kids who are on the spectrum display a hyper-focused attitude and vocabulary about a certain topic of interest and would talk about that topic even without context. These things can point towards ASD, which is the autism spectrum disorder. It's a trial and error kind of process and varies from child to child.
So basically, all in all, the focus then should be basically focusing on any kind of a different or a suspicious attitude, suspicious with regards to perhaps being indicative of autism per se. But at the end of the day, it's all about having the right parental instinct, and by that virtue making that right decision too, on which I'll come to you. I think she's raised some very valid points, Osama, on which I would want you to deliberate further. So when we do talk about autism, something which he rightly so mentioned is the fact that we always need to work towards have a very proactive approach. We need to go towards early intervention. But intervention, as we all understand, is something which definitely requires investment. It requires financial resources. So how do you feel that we as a Pakistani society, as a developing nation, can work towards that? Because a lot of times we see that this might be that one disorder that people from less affluent backgrounds, they might perhaps suffer from. So in their cases, how can we then ensure that yes, they have that capacity to seek timely medical interventions?
Fatma, I think she has raised some very valid concerns. Disability requires added attention due to the fact of a number of facts, and one of the main is that vast majority of persons with this particular type of disability, they remain undiagnosed. Back in 2021, 350,000 people are undiagnosed in this country, and this also exacerbate the problem due to the reason that this particular problem is also social. One of the primary issues
there's a very important social dynamic to it. It's just not from a medical viewpoint that you're viewing things.
So
right.
in one sense, all diseases, they have a certain social context, and they can be remedial measures, but this medical deficiency or disability requires a loss of social attention as well. So in this context, as you show society and also these issues, this cannot be, these persons, they cannot be helped without active engagement of the society, of the community and state.
But in this regard, we must not ignore the fact that not one, rather quite a few laws and policies have actually come forward. But do you not feel here that when we talk about capacity building, this is also something that we equally need to invest in? If we want to ensure that yes, people do have access to healthcare services, we also need to ensure that physicians, that doctors at a very basic level, they are actually aware of autism per se, because a lot of times people might be in self-denial.
That economics issues, and that is where I said that the state must take a proactive role in this, because ultimately this has more incidence or put more pressure on economically less privileged persons, sections of society. And in that sense, the government should take proactive initiative, and some of the good thing is the government in recent years, Pakistan has signed United Nations Convention on Disability.
Yes.
Pakistan signed in 2008 and ratified in 2011. There's a legislation at the federal level, there's a legislation in Punjab, there's a active centers in Sindh. Punjab has a council on disabled persons. At the federal level, there is also a council, and there are also job quotas.
Right.
The good thing is Punjab used to have a 2% quota. They have increased this to 3% quota. Economically not very privileged people, it is important for them that, that this disease, they do not become victim of a double whammy.
Also, in addition to that, something that we do need to consider actively is the fact that we do need to invest in capacity building of professionals as well, whether it is doctors per se, whether it is educators per se, on which I'll come to you, Ms. Fatma, and I would want you to comment on this further. So, when we do talk about looking at this from an educationist viewpoint, what kind of strategies can teachers or lecturers like yourself use so as to ensure that the classroom has an extremely inclusive and very flexible learning environment?
Unfortunately, in our academia, may it be primary level or college level, university level, we don't have specific instructions for the teachers. We don't have refresher courses for the teacher for the information and equipment of ASD issues and challenges. So, it is the individual duty of each and every teacher, if he or she is aware of the fact that these students must be given special, independent and specific technical assistance, so that they may be able to be incorporated in our society as a productive human beings.
Right. So, teachers at a very core level, they also need to be extremely sensitive and they need to be very cognizant of basically kids who are actually on the spectrum. So, in this regard, do you not feel then communication channels are something that we need to work upon, because sometimes children who might suffer from autism, they might not be very comfortable with a certain mode of communication as opposed to the other.
Yeah, true. For that purpose, I think the government should take a particular step in the education department, although the education department is working in different provinces, but not in that particular spectrum. What we want is that we must have special experts in each and every institute, may it be college, school or university, having the team of special experts which like Malaysia has actually incorporating in their academia. So, they are actually trying to assist all those students who are on spectrum to make them be inclusive. And
but in addition to that, another country that I would want to mention is that of Australia, which very particularly has universal design for learning for such students, and it by that virtue also intends to have more flexible learning classrooms per se. So, these are those things from which we as Pakistanis can learn from. But moving on, I think one other positive example that we must put forward through this very show is that of having shadow teachers, or for that matter even teacher assistants, who are very proactively engaged with looking after the needs of autistic children. So, how do you see this practice as an educationist yourself?
It is a practice in under the private sector alone. In private schooling, yes, we see different institutes having psychologist, speech therapist and nothing else. So, they tag them as they are the shadow teachers, but in fact they are not properly trained. So, this is not the solution. The solution is to inculcate and incorporate the strategy, the triangular policy, which includes the parent, the teacher, regular teacher, and the special expert on ASD. Otherwise, we can't achieve the goal. But fortunately, we have certain good examples as well, that we are making people aware in Pakistan, and the medium is obviously the social media and the international specifications. So, we are having certain schools, they are trying their best to fully equip, or at least trying to fully equip these experts to cater the issues of ASD, to make them better human being, rather better citizen for Pakistan.
And this is definitely a practice that we must carry forward with. It should be something which would be sustainable long term too. On which I'll come to you, Ms. Sadia, and I would want you to shed light upon this. So, when we do talk about the issues that parents of autistic children do face in Pakistan, what would be the most glaring issues in this regard? Is it, those issues which actually stem from, of course, not having perhaps ample resources, or, not being able to access the healthcare system so as to get their children timely treatment? Or are these those issues which then at a very basic level stem from societal attitudes, that too regarding autism per se?
Well, the most significant challenge is really coming to terms with the diagnosis of your child and accept the fact that there is something different which could be a lifelong condition, and then stopping to try too hard to make them fit in with the social norms. The first step to treat any kind of issue is to come out of the denial phase, right? And it's very heartbreaking to see that many parents struggle with this for years and years. Another big challenge is to stop the blame game and make the family unit work together for the sake of the child and try to keep the balance between the special child and their siblings and your spouse. That takes a lot of courage. Small everyday tasks can become very difficult in a family which has to make difficult decisions every day to try and have a regular life, while including the child and other family members so no one feels left out.
That's right. But in addition to that, when we talk about the typical stereotypes, that too misconceptions which do exist in the Pakistani society, how do they in turn not only impact, autistic individuals, but families at large? I would want you to deliberate on this from your first-hand experience.
Well, in my opinion, awareness is the key. Most of the people are generally too scared to meet families with special needs kids, and their siblings are also sometimes, they also suffer because of that. It is very critical to spread awareness about autism for it to be accepted by us as a society. In Pakistan, unfortunately, we are a very long way from that, and families with children with special needs face a lot of judgment and criticism.
Right, madam, your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, Osama, and I would want you to deliberate on this further. So when we do talk about doing away all these typical societal misconceptions, these myths, which do unfortunately still surround autism in the Pakistani society, how particularly do you feel can we do just that? Do you feel here that more accurate, more empowering portrayals in the Pakistani media are the way forward in this regard, or do you feel community engagement is something that we seriously need to focus upon?
Fatma, I think it has to be a multi-pronged strategy.
True.
The media, society, they work in a dialectical manner. So media affects society and society in turn affects media. So it has to be a multi-pronged strategy where new forms of media we have seen, TikTok, television, but YouTube. So media, what purpose it serves is educate people, educate society at large, and then society in turns can take initiatives, start a movement, or provide more humane support to persons with disability. So it has to be, no doubt media does play a role. It can't be just media, there has to be community engagement, and ultimately the education has to be through multiple sources.
Right. And in this regard, then it's very pertinent to mention also the fact that, we need to very actively focus upon empowering and helping autistic individuals so as to have a very vocal say when it comes to exercising their rights, when it comes to voicing their needs, on which, madam, I would want you to comment further. So when we look at this from an educationist viewpoint, how particularly do you feel can that be done? Because we do understand, then again, autism is something which comes in different forms. Children can be on the different ends of the spectrum per se, but how can teachers like yourself empower any autistic child, regardless of the fact what kind or what variation or severity of autism they are particularly suffering from, so as to come forward and very openly, talk about their issues, about their concerns, and even for that matter, advocate for their own rights?
Yeah, it's a very important question for the academia. I think there is only one approach that is relevant here, and it may help in a very drastic manner, and that is known as ABA. So we have to have applied behavioral analysis approach at our educational departments, educational systems, may it be private sector, may it be public sector, may it be primary level, college level, university level. So this is the only solution. Once we are actually individually catering each and every individual on their need base, because every child, every student with ASD has a different, particular symptoms and spectrum. So no one may be alike.
Right.
So we can't have one data survey, or for that say one particular rule or any formula. So we have to, experience and then observe and then apply. So Malaysia is again another example who is successfully running this methodology. So ABA is the only solution for all our departments, which ultimately go for the vocational trainings under this approach. So we can make them productive citizens of Pakistan,
right,
in each and every perspective.
But you see then again, madam, inclusion or lack thereof issue which is then prevalent worldwide. I was going over this report it very clearly suggested that full inclusion still remains a challenge, because fewer than 10% of the countries actually have laws which ensure full inclusion in education of autistic children. And here perhaps, Osama, do you not feel then that, you know, the role of collaborative partnerships, that becomes very important, partnerships which are then between healthcare professionals, but also extend to including educational institutions, parents, or even for that matter mental health professionals, because a lot of times we see that such individuals, they very actively seek mental health support.
You're right, Fatma. Society is a complex web, and different parts or a machine, they are connected with each other. So one thing cannot happen or remain in isolation. So collaboration, community engagement, education, these all things would have to come together, and collaboration, without collaboration this problem, or any problem for that matter, a societal problem, cannot be solved.
And this level of collaboration is something which needs to be equally reflective in our policies and in our laws as well, on which I'll come to you, Ms. Sadia, and here I would want you to add to this further. So when we do talk about ensuring that the educational needs of autistic children are met, what are the changes policy wise or otherwise you feel we need to make in this regard, that too in a manner in which we do ensure the classroom environment is such that it not only fosters greater empathy for such children, but it is also by that yardstick equally inclusive too?
Well, there are kids on the spectrum who can go to a regular school with some additional resources, like an SNA, which is a special needs assistant, like an extra teacher who stays with them throughout the day, and an IEP, which is the individual education program, which means they study something else by sitting in the same grade. For example, if they're in grade 3, they'll might be studying English from grade 1, something like that. So it's individualized according to their needs and capabilities. Unfortunately, very few schools offer this in Pakistan. For my son, we had to move to Canada for his education after grade 6 in Lahore, which has excellent special needs education programs, and they also practice the inclusive teaching system. My advice would be to remember that the most important aspect of your child's life is not just learning the math and science, but being in a safe, loving, and healthy environment. If the school cannot provide that, I would strongly suggest homeschooling for them. If I had known this earlier, I seriously might have considered it myself. And if they are enrolled in a school, remember that your role cannot be of a regular parent. You will need to advocate for your child and root for them constantly, and make sure that you're a hands-on parent, aware of all the happenings in their life at school. Check in with the teachers often. Try your best to include them in all activities of the school that makes them feel comfortable, wanted, and appreciated. I'll give you an example. My son, when he was in grade 9, loved basketball, but he didn't understand the rules of the game. But he was great at shooting baskets. So we worked around that, and the school arranged a special 15-minute of basketball shooting competition at the end of the game, so everyone would cheer and clap for him. It gave him a great sense of accomplishment, encouraged him to make friends too. These kind of things the parents can work on with the school management.
Right. So then again, this reiterates the need for there to be collaborative partnerships in this regard. But coming towards you, I think one issue that I would want you to delve upon is that a lot of times we see children who are autistic, they might be subjected to discrimination, they might be subjected to harassment, even bullying for being so. So how do you as an educationist propose, can we get past this? Do Pakistani schools have policies in place so as to cater to this issue?
Yeah, this is very important issue, because in private and public sector, bullying is something which is playing a negative role in unequal, or rather unequal and discriminatory development of any child, which is against the child rights under the Constitution and the International Treaty of CRC. So we have to focus as government initiative as well as the public and private academia initiative to actually cater this problem and address this issue. For that matter, we have actually suggested and acted certain legislative theatres at schools, different schools.
That's very
just to
interesting.
make them aware of the fact that bullying is something which is not allowed. So the peer pressure is something which any AST student can be affected.
When we do talk about this, this is something that we cannot ignore. Peer support, whether it is something which is encouraging, or at the end of the day it is something which ends up in being harassment or bullying for the other person, is something which we very seriously need to consider.
Yeah, in this particular area, I would like to add certain issues that we as teachers shall be, spreading the word that each and every child shall be aware of the fact that when bullying is happening. So, there are certain times in the school timings or the college timings once the child is unattended. So, we have to first make sure under the policies that the children are not specifically with AST are not left alone. The recess time, the break time and the home time is the main area, the timing in which the bullying is reported the most. Secondly, we shall communicate and have smaller scaled seminars for the younger minds to understand the concept of respect, peer respect.
True.
Because we can't make them understand what AST is, but we can make them understand the next person, the next child sitting behind, besides you, in front or at the back, is just like you.
That's very rightly put by yourself, because by that yardstick then we also need to ensure that we take peers along in this struggle of destigmatizing autism per se.
True.
On which I'll come to you, Osama, and here I would want you to comment on not one, rather various initiatives which the Pakistani government has taken when it comes to supporting autistic individuals. So how would you comment on that?
So Fatma, state has a pivotal role in any public initiatives, and especially in such a social problem that has social ramifications. Framework of our system is that Pakistan is a signatory to United Nations Convention.
True.
We have ratified, and there are certain obligations on the state of Pakistan. Pakistan has enacted at the federal level and at the provincial level legislations. There's at the federal level there's a 2020 legislation and then also in
special education policy as well of Punjab.
And Punjab and Sindh has certain acts.
True.
The good thing is that Pakistan, in these definitions, the persons with disability, autism
is included.
Is included in the very broad definition.
Right.
This is also
more particularly after the 2022 law of the Punjab.
Punjab. So not only this, there is also a quota in jobs quota. And the state being one of the largest, in fact, the largest employer in Pakistan. There's a standard 2% quota. Punjab has gone a step ahead, and they have increased the quota to 3% in
That's
governmental
right.
jobs. And also Sindh also has Center for Autism Rehabilitation and Training Center. At the federal level, there have been recent announcements as well. There are councils for the rights of disabled persons under these statutes. So the steps that government has taken are encouraging and in line with the Pakistan's international
Commitments is right, Osama. But in addition to that, it's very important then to also mention the fact that we have had the country's first national program specifically aimed at children with autism, and then we also have the National Autism and Mental Health Center. But with regards to this, what are the most recent developments that we do see happening in this regard?
Yes, post 18th Amendment, the subject of education has been devolved upon the provinces. So we have special education department for the Punjab, and for that matter we have the helpline 1162 and which is very much effective. Secondly, we must appreciate the first ever state of the art creation or innovation and the inauguration of the Center for Autism in the district of Chakwal.
Right.
The DC there personally, took the interest, and actually under the direction of Punjab government, she took the initiative and practically, addressed this issue, and now we can see the role model. It has specifications for all the, needs of AST. For instance, they have sensory rooms, they have psychologists, they have speech therapists, and they have state-of-the-art communicative, inclusive environment. So the Faisalabad district is also following the same model. So we have the examples in Punjab. So we are very much hopeful that we will be having all these centers
under one roof. And that is definitely the need of the hour, Ms. Fatma, because you see, when it comes to treating autistic individuals, they might not have just one issue. They might not just not have speech or language issues.
True.
They might very particularly have, communication issues per se as
Exactly.
well. Or they might also be in need for having the right psychological counseling per se.
Exactly.
Coming towards you, Sadia, I would want you to add to this further. So when it comes to overall making Pakistan's healthcare system more accessible and definitely more affordable for families so as to be able to get their autistic children treated, how particularly do you feel can we do just that?
Not only is it expensive, but also finding the right kind of therapy or therapist is a big challenge, not only in Pakistan but all over the world. Since each child has to be dealt with differently, it takes a long time and many sessions for them to form a relationship of trust with the children. Here, I would like to add that parents should get some training themselves and learn more about this. 3 hours of therapy spread over a week alone cannot help that much, right? A whole change of perspective is needed, and for the therapist, they have to work in unison with the family so that the goals can be achieved and the same strategies are used at home so that it's more effective. Otherwise, it's all going to be in vain. So, I recommend that the parents should play a role in this and not just leave it to the therapist. The various types of therapy for children on the spectrum are EBA, which is the applied behavior analysis. It focuses on changing behaviors by understanding what happens before and after the behavior. Then there's the speech and language therapy. It helps improve the person's understanding and use of speech and language. Then there's the occupational therapy. It teaches skills that help the person live as independently as possible, such as dressing up, eating, bathing, and relating to people. Then there's the PRT, the pivotal response training. It takes place in a natural setting rather than a clinic. The goal is to improve a few pivotal skills which will help the person learn many other skills. Then there's the relationship development intervention, which involves activities that increase motivation, interest, and abilities to participate in shared social interactions.
Right, madam. But in addition to this, when it comes to seeking the right therapy, the core fundamental remains the same, which is the fact that you as a parent need to be extremely aware of your child's behavior, and then of course to get timely interventions too, on which I'll come to you. And I think here one thing which we must definitely discuss is the fact a lot of times we see that children, rural or for that matter the more remote areas of the country, they might be suffering from autism. So when it comes to educating their respective parents who perhaps might be illiterate or semi-illiterate, how do you feel can we do just that?
So I think social media has really changed the game and provided this opening opportunity to state and other organizations working on it. So I believe internet and TikTok and the other forms of communication, people in rural villages, almost this penetration of smartphones and access. So it is not necessary that they need to have a formal education in order to. So through these means of communication, there's Radio Pakistan, there's PTV, but other more recent forms of social media, they can be very educative.
And I feel you see awareness of community health per se, and then autism also being included in that, because you see a lot of times we see that women might be facing many health issues, more particularly gynae related, but they might not have that access to doctors in such rural areas. But you see, then again, if we then include autism within the contours of community health, that perhaps can be a way forward to it. Madam, coming towards you, when we talk about this again from the educationist perspective, what kind of changes do you feel can we possibly make in our educational policies, that too in a way which of course empower teachers and educators like yourself to specifically look out for needs of autistic children?
Yeah, for that matter, first we must have refresher courses for the teachers and the trainers at every educational institute. Particularly equipped with the information of ASD challenges. The challenges are basically again behavioral approaches based. So we have to, apply all those strategies, methodologies which are inclusive of ASD students. Our traditional system of assessments and examination is a problem, is a big huge problem in the private and the public sector.
Right.
So we need to address this issue. We must have certain specific relaxed and individual based ASD assessments which shall be paced with their pace, so that we can get the maximum out of those ASD students who can become positive, productive personalities.
That's very rightly put by yourself, Ms. Fatma. But in addition to that, I think another angle which we of course must not miss is the fact that when it comes to ensuring autistic individuals, they do get equal employment opportunities. How can we work towards that? What kind of collaborative partnerships should we then ideally strive to have in between educational institutions, vocational training institutes and employers per se?
I think we must develop the culture of having mandatory internships for all ASD students at each and every level of our districts in Pakistan.
Right.
This
and
is
this
the
is
only
something that we
solution.
do see happening in other countries, more
Yes.
particularly USA,
Exactly.
which very actively engages with autistic individuals.
Yeah, true. Make them include and coexist in the society. Because this is one of the main social issues, because once they are free from education, they are actually burdened upon the parents, because in Pakistan parenting is not in that advanced mode, because parents are unaware of their spectrums, their issues. So they are we don't have triangular policy, as I earlier said, which does not include the teachers, the experts of ASD and the parent.
Right. So then again, I think this goes back to what Osama was earlier also saying, that the policies, they need to be reflective of these collaborative partnerships too. Osama, but coming towards you and moving towards the end of the show, so when it comes to the role of AI, which definitely has taken so many facets of our life today, how do you feel can AI be that one tool using which we can not only work towards perhaps timely detection of autism in children, but also perhaps work towards effective treatment and prevention of the same too?
So, Fatma, I think AI is a tremendous opportunity, despite misgivings and apprehensions, but that comes with every technology. So, one of the associated disabilities with autism in few cases is learning disability in some cases. So I think AI with tremendous resources, writing now with new forms of communication, especially this media in the revolution that AI is unleashing. So writing, reading, or these are not the only forms. There are multiple sources that can be used. And also at very cheap cost. So
right.
some of
it's
these
very cost effective, right? And you can
effective,
very easily, very conveniently for that matter have those
and
AI
not very
apps.
time consuming
Exactly.
also. At minimal resources, I think it is a tremendous opportunity, and the state, society should.
We all must capitalize on this basically. By that virtue, it's also very important then to also talk about the fact that AI can also be used as that one mechanism so as to actually predict whether somebody is likely to develop autism or not, because you see exactly the right diagnosis of it, that too timely. Coming towards you, Ms. Fatma, and moving towards the end of the show, so what are the most common myths that you as an educator come across, especially when it comes to addressing the unique needs of autistic individuals, that too in educational settings?
Yeah, that's very important and pivotal question. First of all, the biggest myth is that ASD spectrum personalities are violent, which is not true. We can be violent.
Anybody can be violent.
So this myth is debunked. Second, it is commonly known that they are not good communicators. That is not true.
Also that they can't have good interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, that's true. Communication in the shape of, it may be in the shape of writing. I would like to give the example of Michelangelo. Michelangelo is still, alive. The work, the communication is still there.
Of course.
So we need to, debunk all these myths. And the third and the last most important myth is the non-socialization behavior. That is again not true. They are very much good in relationships as fathers and as mothers, as husband and wife, provided we don't, tag them.
Right, Ms. Fatma. And in this regard, I think a very important example that we must of course not miss is that of Greta Thunberg. We all understand that she has been that monumental teenage climate activist, but we all more often than not also ignore the fact that she is an autistic child, and she very openly confesses that it was her autism which actually encouraged, rather pushed her to advocate for climate activism per se. So you see, at the end of the day, it's just not about your diagnosis making you weak or differently abled. It is also empowering you in ways more than one. On which I'll come to you, Ms. Adian, before we conclude today's show. So what would your concluding message be when it comes to wrapping up today's discussion? What are the issues that we need to work upon as a Pakistani society if we want to, at a very basic level, ensure that, autistic individuals, they merely just don't survive in our society, but they also thrive in that regard too, and they're also given that opportunity so as to positively contribute towards societal development?
And organizations are working on this in Pakistan. My son is 20 now, and when he was growing up, there weren't that many options in Pakistan. But this cannot be achieved by the organizations or institutions alone. The parents need to have a good support system and a community where they can find resources and help with dealing with everyday issues, even if it only means venting and catharsis. If the families are connected, they'll be able to help these children thrive better and advocate for their rights. Also, we need to implement these laws in Pakistan for special needs individuals, for the placement of these individuals in the workplaces, schools, sports facilities, etc., so they will be taken seriously by others. There is this new Disability Rights Act approved on 10th of January 2022, which provides a comprehensive legal framework to protect and promote the rights of the people with disabilities in Pakistan. But I don't think many people know about it. Also, financial assistance should also be available for families with special needs, children and adults too.
Right, madam, your point is noted. On which note, I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, Osama. Thank you so much, Ms. Fatma, and thank you so much, Ms. Sadia, for your time today. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about autism not only from a medical viewpoint, but also in addition to that from a societal perspective. If we are serious as a Pakistani society in empowering autistic individuals, that too in the true sense, then we do need to, at a very basic level, ensure that they have equal access, not only when it comes to their education, but also to their employment, and of course with regards to accessing healthcare facilities in the Pakistani society. In this regard, one thing that we as a Pakistani society need to understand and of course appreciate and propagate for is the fact that just because somebody has autism, that doesn't mean that they are weak in any way. That doesn't mean that they have a disability in any way. It can be their superpower too. Thank you for watching The Society. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.